Back in his past life, he was a special forces soldier struggling with society. Gaming was his only escape from reality, his sole comfort in a cold world. He poured all his time into great sin, ignoring everything else to reach completion. Somehow he got sucked into the game, becoming Andrea's Cromwell before the story starts. This realization hits him like a truck. He is stuck in a death-marked character's body. Every character is doomed to repeat the same events, a total nightmare for him. They eventually kill Karen, and he knows he is next on their hit list. Avoiding Karen is his only hope to stay alive and dodge the main plot. If he fails to escape, he will be dragged into the conflict with heroes. Counting on those two special traits earned from 13 weeks of grinding this game. But one slot is totally random, and he got stuck with that dual core trait, which lets him mix magic and swordsmanship, though he doubts he can survive on that. So he starts walking, desperate to pick the perfect second trait for his grim path. Needing something that actually plays nice with his necromancy, staring at the massive list of options, he realizes there are way too many choices. Skipping the obvious stuff like martial arts or weapon paths, he hunts for something better. Scanning through the glowing icons, he looks for anything he has not seen in the game. Then he spots it, a strange, glowing option labeled as Evil Demon Evolution. Whispering the word to himself, he wonders if this is the key to his survival. Evolution is the ultimate shortcut to higher power, adapting a creature to reach new heights. It's a trait he has never seen before, exactly what he needs to break out. Without a second thought, he reaches out to lock in his choice with his ring. This system confirms his selection, and the evolution trait is officially bound to his soul. Staring into the void, he finally sees the path forward. Standing amidst the rising flames, he wonders what kind of monster he is becoming now. Endeavor's stronghold is getting absolutely toasted. The last line of defense is basically charcoal. Massive shockwaves rip through the front lines, tossing soldiers like they're made of paper. Desperate knights scream as they get cut down, their formation crumbling in seconds. Those green-skinned monsters are literally scaling the walls, turning the fortress into a slaughterhouse. Screaming orders, the commander rallies his men to fight back against the incoming tide. Chanting orcs raise their axes, clearly not here for a diplomatic chat or tea. Magic blasts erupt everywhere, turning the battlefield into a chaotic, fiery, and lethal mess. Massive brutes smash through the barricades, their brute force making tactical planning look pathetic. Endless waves of bloodthirsty orcs keep pouring in, proving that numbers really do win. Vivian Endeavor watches the carnage, sweating bullets while realizing his defense is totally cooked. Looking out from the high ground, the commanders see the south gate basically melting. Trouble arrives in bulk, but the real nightmare is the boss joining the party. That orc lord is built different, radiating pure aura energy like a total show-off. Standing amidst the flames, he prepares to unleash some high-tier aura skills on everyone. Smoke chokes the sky as the walls fall, leaving the defenders with zero options. Soldiers scramble to hold the line, but they're just delaying the inevitable at this point. Giant orc feet stomp down, turning the battlefield into a literal crushing experience. Poor knights get flattened instantly, their armor doing absolutely nothing against that raw power. Broken bodies litter the ground, the cost of this defense becoming painfully, brutally clear. Someone finally taps into a mysterious power, hoping to turn this disaster around somehow. That massive orc just stomped a knight into the dirt. Talk about a bad day. Everywhere you look, the fallen are twitching back to life with that eerie green glow. Panicked defenders scream in terror, watching their own brothers-in-arms rise as mindless, glowing puppets. Corpses are literally standing up to join the enemy. Talk about a HR nightmare. One orc gets a blade to the gut, but he just laughs it off. Realization hits the knights like a freight train. There is a necromancer in the mix. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the fortress, turning the entire gate into a crater. Our boy steps onto the scene, radiating pure crackling energy while the orcs look shook. He drops the mask, ready to show these monsters what real power looks like. Staring down the orc lord, he acknowledges the guy's aura with a cold, sharp gaze. Lightning arcs wildly as he summons his own undead army to crash the party. Standing tall, he signals the start of the real fight, looking absolutely menacing. Waves of his own skeletal warriors surge forward, ready to tear through the orc lines. Massive shockwaves ripple across the field as his forces collide with the green tide. He unleashes a devastating strike, sending orcs flying like they're made of cheap plastic. Moving with lethal precision, he cuts through the chaos, targeting the biggest threats first. That orc lord tries to block, but the sheer force of the impact is insane. A blur of motion tears through the air, proving speed is the ultimate game changer. Blades clash in a shower of sparks, turning the battlefield into a high-octane blender. Everything is pure carnage now, with his undead squad dominating the entire front line. Our boy slams the ground, shockwaves turning the earth into a literal death trap. Orcs get sent flying like ragdolls, their formation shattered by that insane, raw impact. He stands amidst the wreckage, casually dropping a line about how vast the world is. Then he carves through the chaos, proving that necromancy and elite swordsmanship are a lethal combo. Watching him move is honestly baffling. He's just dancing through the carnage with zero effort. That massive orc lord screams in pure rage, clearly not used to losing his momentum. Another wave of green-skinned fodder gets wiped out, his power making them look like toys. He weaves through the air with lethal grace, cutting down anything that dares to breathe. Dark energy pulses as he strikes, tearing through the orc ranks like a hot knife. Those monsters are finally feeling the sting, their glowing eyes showing some genuine, panicked confusion. Blood and debris fill the air, he's basically painting the battlefield with his own style. Shadows stretch across the field, his aura completely suffocating the remaining orc resistance right now. Knights watch in total disbelief, realizing he's single-handedly flipping the script on this entire war. Even with the Empire's strict ban on black magic, he's just flexing his forbidden skills. This orc lord growls, admitting he's actually impressed that mere corpses could stop his advance. Mocking the effort, he tells the orc that this little trick is not enough to win. Looking at the carnage, the orc lord just smiles, calling the whole mess absolutely splendid. He eyes the orc lord like a new toy, finally finding a body worth keeping. Offering a twisted promotion, he decides the orc has the qualifications to join his ranks. Then he lunges forward, closing the distance to seal the deal with a sharp blade. Our boy lunges with lethal intent, forcing the massive orc lord onto the defensive. Steel flashes through the air as he closes the gap, moving like a shadow. That orc lord counters with a glowing fist, but the speed difference is honestly embarrassing. Shockwaves ripple outward from the impact, yet he barely breaks a sweat during the exchange. Glowing energy crackles around his blade, signaling he is ready to get really serious now. Staring down his opponent, the orc lord looks genuinely annoyed that his brute force failed. Blades dance in a blur of motion, turning the duel into a high-stakes rhythm game. Sudden cracks appear in the orc's weapon, proving that even heavy iron has its limits. Summoning his spectral armor, he prepares to finish this dance with a bit more style. Standing amidst the ruins, he declares his need for power while the orc watches intently. Dark magic surges beneath his feet, pulling forth bone armor that looks absolutely terrifying. Survival is his only motivation, or so he claims while wrapping himself in death. Watching from the sidelines, a mysterious ally observes his transformation with a look of awe. Her gaze lingers on the battlefield, clearly impressed by the raw potential he is displaying. Eyes narrowing behind his mask, he locks onto the target with cold, calculated precision. Bone plates snap into place over his body, turning him into a walking nightmare. Spectral beasts manifest at his side, ready to tear through whatever remains of the resistance. Another powerful entity watches the scene unfold, sensing the shift in the balance of power. Fully armored in skeletal gear, he looks like the final boss of this entire war. Facing the orc lord once more, the real fight finally begins with everything online. This orc lord grins, demanding one final, glorious dance of death before the curtain falls. Andreas Cromwell accepts the challenge, his blade singing as he prepares to carve his legacy. Watching from the shadows, his allies hold their breath, sensing the sheer weight of this clash. Spectral beasts stand ready, their glowing eyes fixed on the carnage unfolding in the distance. Another undead warrior looms, a silent witness to the power about to be unleashed here. Explosive energy rips through the air as Andreas Cromwell lunges, closing the gap in seconds. Determination burns in his eyes, every muscle coiled and ready to strike with lethal intent. Light dances off his steel, a blur of motion that defies the orc's massive reach. Sparks fly as their weapons collide, the impact shaking the very foundation of the earth. Far from the battlefield, the prestigious Rodlin Academy stands, a place of secrets and lies. Time ticks away in the halls, marking the progress of those hiding their true nature. Students walk the corridors, oblivious to the dark rituals happening right under their pristine noses. Deep within a hidden chamber, a swirling portal hums with forbidden, violet energy. Andreas Cromwell leads the way, his companion questioning if this is truly the right spot. Apologizing for the mess, he reveals a chamber littered with bodies and dried blood. Necromancy is their trade, a dangerous path that would guarantee their immediate execution if discovered. Shadows cling to them, their dual identities a constant, suffocating weight they must carry alone. Steel glints in the dim light, a sharp reminder of the risks they constantly run. Pouring out a dark concoction, Andreas Cromwell prepares the ritual with cold, practiced efficiency. Standing over the circle, he commands his partner to step back as the work begins. Andreas Cromwell channels eerie blue energy, trying to animate a skull with his dark arts. His eyes look absolutely exhausted, the toll of this forbidden practice clearly hitting him hard. That spectral form flickers and dies, the magic failing to take hold in the cold air. Another failed experiment leaves him frustrated, his necromancy skills still needing a serious power boost. His mentor watches with a cold stare, unimpressed by the lack of progress today. Flickering torchlight casts long shadows, highlighting the grim atmosphere of their hidden underground workspace. A blood-stained mop sits abandoned, a reminder of the messy cleanup he just finished. He stands alone in the dark, questioning if this dangerous path is even worth it. Shelves packed with cursed grimoires stare back, offering knowledge that comes at a terrible price. Clutching a forbidden book, he knows this library is his only source for black magic. Light spills into the room, signaling his mentor's arrival to check on the daily progress. His mentor scolds him for the slow cleanup, clearly expecting perfection from his young apprentice. Sitting behind the desk, the older man radiates pure authority and a total lack of empathy. He delivers a chilling ultimatum, making it clear that failure is absolutely not an option. Andreas Cromwell keeps his head down, masking his true feelings behind a veil of obedience. Another chance is granted, but the task is grim: retrieve a fresh body from the graveyard. His mentor reminds him of his orphan status, using that leverage to keep him compliant. Constant pressure to prove his worth weighs on him, survival being the only real goal. He knows the stakes perfectly well, one slip-up and he becomes the next test subject. Bowing to his master, he accepts the dark mission and prepares to head out again. Andreas Cromwell exits the building, grumbling about how he did not even get travel expenses. His eyes look completely dead inside, clearly over this whole academy life nonsense. Classmates whisper behind his back, wondering why he is still hanging around the place. He snaps at them to back off, refusing to be their little entertainment show. Stuck in this role, Andreas Cromwell laments having zero clue how to escape his fate. This academy looms like a prison, a dark reminder of his tragic orphan background. He plays the part of a pathetic villain groveling at the feet of others. Nobody wants to be this guy, yet he is forced to live this life. Trapped in the world of great sin, he realizes he is actually Makoto Kenshiro. Standing amidst the rising flames, he wonders what kind of monster he is becoming now. Andreas Cromwell stares into the abyss, his undead minions waiting for his next command. That transformation is wild, turning him into a powerhouse while he keeps his cool. He vows to survive this game at all costs, no matter how broken the world. Back at the academy, he realizes his current status is basically a total joke. Elemental magic is a bust, so he leans hard into his new creepy necromancy skills. Grabbing his gear, he plans a quick stop before hitting the graveyard for supplies. Power is the only currency that matters, especially with his life on the line. He knows the main cast is a death sentence, so he keeps his head down. Entering the Forbidden Zone, he hunts for secrets hidden behind these heavy, ancient doors. Those grimoires look like a one-way ticket to a grave, but he needs that edge. Something in the corner catches his eye, a threat he did not expect to find. Locked in a cage, a red-haired woman stares back, definitely a high-level vampire. She's way too dangerous for Karen to handle, a mid-game boss in captivity. Andreas Cromwell weighs the risk, wondering if this prisoner is his golden ticket out. Locking eyes with her, he starts plotting a move that could change everything. She asks for a way out, her gaze sharp enough to cut through steel. Riding the train, he keeps his thoughts hidden while the world rushes past him. Temptation is a dangerous game, but he is already deep in the dark woods. He makes a bold offer, promising to take out Karen if she plays along. That vampire grins, questioning if he is ready to face the consequences of his ambition. That vampire sees right through Andreas Cromwell, noting his weird behavior around the boss. He hesitates to free her, knowing a bloodsucker's promise is worth absolutely nothing. Desperate, she swears on her life, but Andreas Cromwell remains skeptical of her word. Weighing his options, he decides to stall, fearing his mentor's wrath more than her. Leaving the cage, he grabs his gear, ignoring her frantic demands for an immediate release. Riding the train to the graveyard, he plots to research how to handle dangerous vampires. Dragging his heavy luggage, he struggles, clearly missing the perks of having actual magic. Walking through the dark, he laments the physical toll of this weak, pathetic mage body. Gritting his teeth, he accepts the grind, knowing he needs raw strength to survive today. Arriving at the National Graveyard, he finds the gate, the designated spot for illicit pickups. Posing as a relative, he lies to the guard, claiming he is Jenny's third grandson. Offering flowers as a cover, he gains entry, the guard buying his flimsy, sad story. Slipping through the gates, he breathes a sigh of relief, his bluff actually working out. Meeting his contact, he complains about his aching hip, the life of a necromancer sucks. This contact hands over the goods, clearly unimpressed by his constant, whining complaints. Inside the coffin lies a knight's corpse, the fresh material he needs for his experiments. Giving a polite thanks, he hides his exhaustion, just wanting to get this over with. Hauling the heavy body, he struggles, the weight of his dark path literally crushing him. Pausing near a tombstone, he catches his breath, feeling a strange sense of sudden unease. Staring at the name on the grave, he freezes, recognizing it from his past life. Andreas Cromwell stares in shock, realizing he's stumbled upon the legendary aura master Nicol Lifehill. That old man spent decades in total isolation, perfecting the absolute path of the sword. His face is weathered by time, hiding the immense power of a true master swordsman. Watching him practice, Andreas Cromwell sees the raw, terrifying speed of those dual blades. A single strike shatters the air, the sheer force of his aura bending the environment. Yet despite reaching the pinnacle of swordsmanship, the master eventually passes away from old age. Nature itself seems to react to his final breath, leaves swirling in a violent gust, dying like that was just a weird hidden Easter egg tucked away in the game. Andreas Cromwell can't help but wonder why the developers wasted such a cool character design. Nobody else knows about the master's secret, so he stands alone in the dark graveyard. Imagining the potential, he realizes a death knight made from this body would be insane. Karen definitely could not handle a high-ranking undead, but Andreas Cromwell has his own evolving plans. He needs a corpse with serious latent potential to really kick off his new evolution. Scanning the ground, he keeps his eyes peeled for the perfect vessel for his magic. Calling out to the gravedigger, he tries to secure the goods under the triple moon. This worker shuts him down fast, claiming he needs direct permission from the boss, Karen. Pleading his case, the guy just wants to keep his job without getting caught stealing. Andreas Cromwell pauses, calculating the best way to bribe his way past this annoying gatekeeper. Pulling out a fancy ring, he tests the waters to see if greed wins out. Seeing the Count's crest, the gravedigger's eyes pop, realizing he's looking at a literal fortune. Andreas Cromwell offers his only ring as a bribe, desperate for any edge. This gravedigger snatches it up instantly, clearly thrilled to score such a sweet deal. Our boy sighs, knowing he just traded a noble heirloom for a dead guy. Under the massive moon, he prepares to dig up the legendary master's final resting. Creaking open the coffin, he finally stares at the remains of the Aura Master. His hands tremble, realizing the future he predicted is actually starting to take shape. Andreas Cromwell vows to start his necromancer training, welcoming his first undead subordinate aboard. He orders the gravedigger to watch the supplies while he handles the heavy lifting. Back in the lab, he is already busy prepping the body for his experiments. Scrubbing the corpse, he jokes that his body must have some weird muscle memory. Wiping his brow, he rushes to finish so he can hit the books immediately. Standing over the massive frame, he wonders if he is actually ready for this. Looking at the legendary corpse, he doubts his current skill can handle such power. Activating his necromancy, he hopes the evolution trait can bridge the gap for him. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the silence, demanding to know why he is stalling. Andreas Cromwell freezes, his eyes narrowing as he realizes he is not alone here. Turning around, he is shocked to find the vampire awake and watching his moves. She taunts him through the bars, asking if he really wants to stay pathetic. Walking away, he ignores her bait, keeping his focus on his own dark agenda. This vampire watches him leave, smirking because she knows he will eventually come back. That vampire is practically salivating, demanding to know if Andreas Cromwell finally picked a side. She mocks his pathetic subservience to Karen, clearly enjoying the sight of him struggling. Andreas Cromwell keeps his cool, reading through his notes while formulating a truly devious plan. She gets impatient, snapping at him for just standing there like a total creep. Threatening to end him even if he frees her, she really needs a chill pill. Our boy finally breaks his silence, confirming he will let her out of that cage. Admitting he is sick of playing lapdog to Karen, he makes his move at last. She practically beams, holding out her shackled wrists like a kid waiting for a present. Andreas Cromwell is not born yesterday, forcing her to swear on her family name for safety. Demanding a blood oath that she will not kill him, he plays this dangerous game smart. Watching her reaction, he confirms the lore is legit. Vampires cannot break those specific vows. He knows he has her cornered now, the ultimate leverage for a guy like him. Staring deep into her eyes, he finally accepts the terms of their twisted little deal. She swears on Lucifer's name, sealing the pact with a look of pure predatory intent. Suddenly, the system glitches, popping up a notification that leaves him completely stunned. Detecting an evolvable specimen, the game confirms Angela Lucifer has a 55% success rate. Andreas Cromwell realizes he can evolve entities other than his own summons, a total game changer. He shrugs off any potential consequences, telling her it's not his fault if things go sideways. She starts to panic, realizing too late that she might have just been played. Without hesitation, he hits the yes button, ready to see what kind of monster emerges. Angela Lucifer starts convulsing as the system forces a massive, reality-bending evolution upon her. Andreas Cromwell watches in horror, realizing he might have just triggered a total catastrophe. She screams in agony, her body warping while he stands there, completely out of options. That vampire glares at him, clearly regretting the deal as her form shifts uncontrollably. Energy surges around her, the sheer power threatening to tear the entire room apart. Silence finally falls, but Andreas Cromwell is left sweating, unsure if he actually succeeded. Realizing his new trait works on others, he pivots to his next insane gamble. He eyes the legendary corpse, deciding it is time to bring the master back. Setting up the ritual circle, he prepares to summon Nicol Lifehill from the grave. Taking a deep breath, Andreas Cromwell reaches out, channeling his dark, necromantic energy. Blue flames erupt as he activates the summoning, the air thick with ancient power. System notifications flood his vision, confirming that the target is compatible with his magic. Mana drains rapidly, leaving him gasping as the cost of this summon hits hard. A skeleton rises, but it is no ordinary minion, it is a legendary warrior reborn. Andreas Cromwell stares in disbelief, seeing the system upgrade the skeleton to a soldier. Nicol Lifehill stands before him, retaining his memories and that terrifying, lethal sword mastery. Mastery flashes in the air, the ultimate peak of skill that defies death itself. Our boy is stunned, realizing he just turned a dead legend into his subordinate. That skeleton points a bony finger, signaling he is ready for his next command. Andreas Cromwell smirks, knowing he finally has the muscle to survive this broken world. Andreas Cromwell smirks, realizing he has a full year before Karen kicks the bucket. Lounging in his room, he checks the calendar, plotting his next move with cold precision. Checking his status, he sees his necromancy stats climbing, even while he just sits around. Reviewing his current skills, he decides it is finally time to unleash his legendary skeleton. Standing up, he prepares to summon Nicol Lifehill, the ultimate weapon for his dark plans. Confirming the prompt, he watches as the blue aura manifests his new, terrifying undead subordinate. Realizing the skeleton looks way too suspicious, he decides to give him a quick makeover. Hiding his new recruit is a priority, so he finds some clothes to blend in. Dressed in a coat and scarf, the skeleton actually passes for a weird, quiet human. Admiring his handiwork, Andreas Cromwell chuckles, thinking he really pulled off a master-level disguise here. Watching the skeleton practice his swings, he realizes the muscle memory is still fully active. Stunned, he confirms the game lore was accurate. The master is still training in death. Questioning the logic of a ghost still grinding, he just shrugs, happy for the help. Smiling to himself, he realizes this is the perfect shortcut to his own power goals. Clenching his fist, he prepares to finally cultivate his own weak, pathetic physical trait. Calling out to Nicol, he demands the skeleton start the lesson right this second. Asking for sword training, he hopes to learn from the best, even if he is dead. Studying the scroll, he learns the harsh truth: shorter talent names mean way more power. Getting into position, he lets the master guide his arms through the proper sword stance. Feeling his joints pop, he realizes his weak body is barely handling this intense training. Andreas Cromwell is honestly just relieved he finally has a teacher who does not talk back. He's mapping out a future where he juggles both aura and mana like a pro, envisioning his own path as a magic swordsman with dual cores burning inside his chest. Dreaming big, he wants to reach heights that would make even the great emperors jealous. Suddenly, a bony hand grabs his clothes, snapping him right out of his daydreaming phase. Andreas Cromwell yelps in surprise, totally caught off guard by the skeleton's sudden aggressive physical contact. Nickel Lifehill is not playing around, demanding total focus while he corrects the kid's sloppy stance. Our boy wonders how a literal pile of bones has a grip that hurts. Nickel explains that his special forces background makes this physical training a total walk. Memories of his past life flash, reminding Andreas Cromwell that he needs to toughen up. He snaps at the skeleton to stop pinching him, clearly losing his cool already. Taking a break, Andreas Cromwell checks his progress while sipping tea in his quiet room. He pulls up his system interface, curious if his necromancy stats actually moved the needle. Seeing his level jump, he realizes the grind is actually paying off way faster. Leveling up is getting tougher, but he knows the long-term payoff is worth the wait. Karen has been suspiciously quiet lately, leaving Andreas Cromwell to wonder what the boss wants. This vampire is still snoozing in her cage, oblivious to the chaos brewing outside. He assumes the evolution process is just slow, hoping everything is still going to plan. Suddenly, he looks over, completely fed up with the constant, repetitive noise of the training. Nickel Lifehill is back at it, swinging his blade with terrifying, relentless undead precision. Andreas Cromwell knows his undead buddy is a cheat code for infinite tireless training sessions, but he's still stuck with a weak human body that needs actual rest and recovery. Potions are the obvious answer for a super grind, yet they cost way too much gold. Crafting them himself seems like the only play, even if he lacks the exact recipe. Schooling himself is the next logical step, so he heads to the academy for answers. This campus looms large, filled with students who have no idea who just walked in. Our boy strolls into the lecture hall looking like he owns the place, or at least. Whispers start flying immediately, with classmates guessing he's just here to chase some easy tale. He hears the trash talk loud and clear, but he's not here for their drama. Keeping his head down is the goal, since he's got way bigger fish to fry. His eyes narrow, scanning the room for any useful intel that might actually be worth. Students watch him with judgmental stares, clearly thinking he's some kind of social climbing loser. One girl keeps her chin propped up, looking bored as the lecture finally kicks off. This professor demands silence, signaling that the real work is about to start right now. Class is in session, and Andreas Cromwell notes that the curriculum matches his game knowledge. He waits for the good stuff, hoping the teacher drops the specific mixing ratio soon. This instructor starts breaking down a physical reinforcement potion, drawing all eyes to the board. Something feels off as the recipe on the board clashes with his own expert memory. He's internally fuming, realizing this amateur teacher is peddling a potion with dangerous, unnecessary side effects. Andreas Cromwell decides he's had enough, raising his hand to call out the blatant incompetence. Andreas Cromwell calls out the professor for his amateur, potentially lethal potion recipe. A confused student stares back, wondering why this guy is suddenly acting like a genius. This entire lecture hall goes dead silent, everyone staring at our boy's bold, public challenge. Andreas Cromwell doubles down, questioning the instructor's logic while the room fills with awkward tension. This professor snaps back with a snarky comment about making soup, completely missing the point. Our boy just sighs, realizing this academy is clearly operating on some seriously outdated intel. Walking out of the lecture, Andreas Cromwell decides his own knowledge is far more reliable. He resolves to study alone, done with wasting time on these clueless academic hacks. Heading back to his private space, he plans to master the craft by himself. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl watches him with a suspicious, unreadable look in her eyes. Deep inside the research department, Andreas Cromwell sets up his own makeshift secret lab. Working through the night, he attempts to brew the potion with his own refined methods. A sudden system notification flashes red, signaling yet another disastrous failed attempt at alchemy. He grabs his hair in frustration, cursing the high cost of these wasted, rare materials. Slumped in his chair, Andreas Cromwell laments his dwindling funds and the lack of progress. He wonders if he's truly on his own, doubting anyone would help a guy like him. Suddenly, the heavy doors to his lab creak open, breaking the silence of his room. That same girl from the lecture peeks inside, her gaze locking onto him with intent. She greets him calmly, clearly having tracked him down to his hidden private workspace. Andreas Cromwell panics, realizing a major playable character just walked into his trap, or vice versa. Lucia Everlast, the potion genius, suddenly crashes Andreas Cromwell's private secret research hideout. She mocks his obvious failure, sniffing the smoke while he prays she just leaves. Ignoring his desperate need for privacy, she keeps digging into his mysterious secret experiments. Andreas Cromwell internally screams, realizing his academic struggles are just piling up way too fast. Silence hangs heavy in the room, but she refuses to take the hint and scram. She calls him out for being bitter while he just wants to be left alone. Surprised, he hears her suggest a partnership, which is definitely not what he expected today. Lucia leans in, asking if he wants to study together, totally invading his personal space. She stares him down, daring him to reject such a perfectly logical, genius-level business proposal. Resigned to his fate, Andreas Cromwell realizes he has zero leverage to actually say no. He demands to know her true motive, suspicious of why she's helping a total loser. Lucia shrugs off his paranoia, acting like wanting a research partner is totally normal behavior. She claims she just wants some gratitude, which sounds like a trap if I've ever. Flattery flows as she praises his hidden talent, acting like she's his biggest fan now. He just stares back, thinking he was only trying to brew some basic medicine alone. Flashbacks reveal Lucia is actually fighting a terminal system disease, desperate for a real cure. Since the experts failed, she's been grinding alchemy solo, hoping to save her own life. This system-granted illness is a death sentence, forcing her to become a master of potions. Andreas Cromwell knows the exact recipe from his game knowledge, giving him all the power. He realizes her intelligence is a threat, so he blasts her away to protect secrets. Lucia corners Andreas Cromwell, clearly hunting for answers after his lecture hall outburst. She pushes for a partnership, but our boy is not buying her suspicious, sudden interest. Dropping a specific ingredient name, she proves she knows exactly what he is brewing. Andreas Cromwell panics internally, wondering how she cracked his secret high-level alchemy recipe. Pointing at his equipment, she offers a fix that could actually stabilize the potion. Wealthy and connected, she dangles a cash incentive to lure him into her orbit. He shuts her down cold, refusing to trade his autonomy for her shiny gold. Undeterred, Lucia leaves with a smug grin, betting he will crawl back to her. Alone again, Andreas Cromwell stands his ground, determined to solve this mess without help. Grabbing his training staff, he tries to clear his head and focus on basics. Nickel Lifehill joins the session, forcing him to keep grinding despite the mounting stress. Pacing the room, he realizes that without capital, his grand plans are hitting walls. Desperation sets in as he racks his brain for any legal way to earn. Nickel interrupts his brooding with a sudden, aggressive training strike, scaring the living daylights. Andreas Cromwell snaps at the skeleton, realizing his focus is completely shot today. Training continues, but his mind is stuck on the crushing reality of being broke. Mysterious letter sits on his desk, mocking him with its potential easy solution. He stares at the paper, realizing his only path to funds is begging family. Cringing, he recalls the original Andreas Cromwell was a total leech for that cash. Walking away, he vows this pathetic, gold-digging move will be his absolute final time. Wandering the academy grounds, Andreas Cromwell suddenly spots a familiar face watching from above. Diane Alvin locks eyes with him, her expression shifting into pure, unadulterated disdain. She wonders if the guy finally grew a brain, though she doubts his trashy personality. Watching him walk by, she remains convinced that no amount of change can fix him. Andreas Cromwell mentally checks out, realizing he's just crossed paths with another lethal academy powerhouse. Diane Alvin sits by the fountain, radiating genius energy while he prays to stay invisible. Childhood memories surface, reminding him that their families grew apart after the Cromwell debt crisis. He knows that talking to her is basically a death sentence, given his past reputation. Feeling like a total loser, he accepts that his survival chances are currently hovering near. Desperation forces his hand, confirming that hitting up his younger sister for cash is necessary. Arriving at the capital, Andreas Cromwell prepares for the most awkward family reunion in history. Amy Cromwell greets him with surprise, clearly not expecting her deadbeat brother to show up. She questions why he ghosted all her letters, clearly annoyed by his complete lack of. Apologizing for his past, Andreas Cromwell tries to act humble while asking for the favor. Amy Cromwell stares at him, genuinely shocked that her brother is actually acting like human. Sipping his drink, he feels the weight of his pride crumbling under financial ruin. She sighs, reading his desperate face like a book and guessing he needs money again. Sliding an envelope across the table, she hands over the funds he so desperately needs. Warning him not to waste it, she watches as he promises to pay her back. Amy Cromwell looks at him with lingering doubt, wondering if this change is actually real. Amy Cromwell demands to know where the family ring went, eyes locked on him. Andreas Cromwell lies about taking it off for safekeeping, sweating through his own excuses. She clearly senses the deception, pressing him on whether he actually sold the heirloom. Guilt hangs in the air as she realizes the truth behind his desperate, hollow gaze. Apologizing feels useless now, but he mutters the words while staring at the floor. Amy Cromwell snaps, ordering him out and cutting ties with her pathetic, disgraced brother. Desperate to stop her, he tries to explain, but she refuses to take his money. Watching her walk away, he vows to reclaim the ring and fix his reputation. Realizing how much that item meant to her, he feels the weight of his failure. Seeing her genuine anger leaves him feeling hollow, confused by this newfound human misery. Clenching his fist, Andreas Cromwell commits to getting that ring back at any cost. Standing before graves, he questions the point of just existing without a real purpose. Remembering his lonely survival in the game, he hates the emptiness of his life. Deciding to stop wallowing, he accepts the partnership with Lucia to finally move forward. Back at the academy, he gets roasted for being a total shut-in all week. While he grinds through morning runs, Lucia stays behind, living that lazy, genius life. They team up in the lab, mixing volatile reagents to push their research forward. Pushing his physical limits, Andreas Cromwell hits the weights while she rests nearby. Balancing training and alchemy is brutal, but her expertise makes the process way faster. Catching her napping on the couch, he wonders if she's actually doing any work. Andreas Cromwell is losing his mind, convinced he is the only one actually working here, while Lucia just lounges around, completely unbothered by his intense, frantic potion brewing session. She lazily barks out instructions, telling him to tweak the ingredients for a better result. Andreas Cromwell grinds herbs, admitting that her genius intuition is actually saving his entire project. He carefully pours the mixture, watching the liquid shift into a deep, vibrant red hue. With a steady hand, he adds the final drops, his eyes locked on the reaction. This serum drips down, hitting the glass with a satisfying, precise splash of pure potential. Swirling colors blend together, signaling that this batch is finally hitting the mark. A system notification pops up, confirming he successfully manufactured an intermediary-grade physical reinforcement potion. Andreas Cromwell lets out a wild laugh, causing Lucia to ask if he failed again. He shouts that it actually worked, ending his long, grueling report on the experiment. This system chimes in, granting him a new talent for ordinary-grade potion brewing buffs. Confused, Andreas Cromwell stares at the screen, wondering what this evolution probability even means. Another prompt appears, showing he can evolve traits if the right conditions are met. He notes the low percentage, realizing it is even harder than his previous vampire evolution. Testing the potion, he is shocked to find it has virtually zero side effects. Lucia suddenly perks up, realizing they can push this to the committee for daily use. Andreas Cromwell tells her to handle the paperwork since he did all the heavy lifting. She cheers, happy to take the credit while he just stands there, completely stunned. Watching the sunset, he realizes she was playing him the whole time, total genius move. Andreas Cromwell watches the system clock tick down, his vampire evolution hitting the final stretch. Pain radiates through his body, a burning sensation that feels like more than just evolution. This train barrels toward the midterm evaluation site, signaling the start of a high-stakes test. Andreas Cromwell keeps his nose in a book, confident that Lucia will crush the first exam. Looming ahead, the massive magic tower waits, the final destination for their upcoming academic nightmare. Training with his skeleton buddy, Andreas Cromwell sharpens his skills to survive the brutal midterm. He studies complex diagrams, desperate to master the material before the clock runs out entirely. Checking on his evolving ally, he hopes the process finishes before he faces the academy. Trying to act casual, Andreas Cromwell probes Diane for intel on the upcoming midterm chaos. Two students gossip nearby, wondering what kind of hellish tasks the academy has planned today. One girl chirps about the randomness of group assignments, clearly hoping for a lucky draw. Diane remains stoic, acting like she is above the drama regardless of her assigned partners. Her friend whispers a warning, knowing that group dynamics can turn deadly in this academy. Pointing at Andreas Cromwell, she asks the terrifying question, what if they get stuck with him? He ignores the side-eyes, packing his bag while mentally preparing for the worst-case scenario ahead. Diane catches his gaze, her expression shifting to pure dread as the reality sinks in. This announcement echoes through the carriage, signaling their arrival at the Auckland training station. Everyone scrambles to disembark, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with steel. Students flood onto the platform, a sea of anxious faces bracing for the upcoming trial. This academy gates loom, confirming that the random group task is officially about to begin. This instructor lays out the rules: 3 warriors, 1 mage, and a supervisor per team. Monday is the hard deadline for their mission, and he wishes them all good luck. Tensions spike as the academy finally starts reading off the official group assignments for everyone. Andreas Cromwell stares at his list, his internal monologue hitting a new level of panic. 2 notorious villains from his memories are actually stuck in his specific cursed exam group. Hazar the cult fighter and Vivian the lunatic are now his teammates for this nightmare. Checking the paper again, he realizes his luck is officially as trash as his reputation. Someone approaches him and he turns to see a guy who looks ready to brawl. Christopher introduces himself, though his vibe is basically a walking, talking red flag for trouble. He immediately starts roasting Andreas Cromwell for training like a warrior instead of a mage. Hazar jumps into the conversation, trying to play it cool while the others just glare. Laughing off the tension, Hazar notes that being an unfriendly warrior is a massive problem. Vivian chimes in with pure disdain, calling the whole group a bunch of crazy guys. Christopher snaps back at the insults, clearly annoyed by the weirdos in their assigned squad. Andreas Cromwell tells them to shut up, tired of the bickering before they even start. Someone else is clearly a problem, and he realizes the team dynamic is already dead. A mysterious, tough-looking supervisor spits on the ground, making their situation look even more bleak. Staring at his new squad, he concludes this is easily the worst group in history. This instructor confirms they can grab their mission request once everyone is finally gathered together. Andreas Cromwell looks at his chaotic team, wondering if he can actually survive this mess. A sleek train cuts through the landscape, carrying our boy toward his first real mission. Ivy Claire, the supervisor, greets the squad with a vibe that screams total, unbothered chaos. She drops the mission file, tasking them with investigating a village in a baron's territory. Rumors of a murdered landlord and a missing investigator make this job sound absolutely delightful. Andreas Cromwell notes she's way more aggressive than in the game, a real red flag. Known as a future Aura Master, Ivy Claire is basically a walking, talking, lethal power trip. He worries her personality will turn this mission into a total disaster before it even starts. Snarky comments fly as the group bickers, with someone calling Andrea's Cromwell a seaweed-headed mage. She mocks his physical strength, questioning if a mage can even lift a single heavy object. Retorting, Andrea's Cromwell hits back at her jerky-chewing habit, clearly tired of her constant attitude. Tensions reach a breaking point, and he just prays they arrive at their destination already. This massive castle looms ahead, looking way too big for a simple backwater baron's home. Baron Boleric welcomes them, looking like he is hiding a secret behind that tired, weary face. Sitting them down, he prepares to spill the beans on the mess they are investigating. He reveals the murdered landlord was his own nephew, a man with absolutely no family. Sipping tea, the Baron keeps his composure while the tension in the room starts rising. Claiming he has shared everything he knows, he leaves the rest of the mystery hanging. Andrea's Cromwell thanks him for the info, though he knows the real truth is buried. Suddenly, a servant leans in to whisper something urgent to the Baron, breaking the mood. Fear flashes across the Baron's face as the servant delivers news about his young master. Andrea's Cromwell stands with his chaotic squad, staring down the Baron in his own home. Silence stretches thin as our boy keeps his guard up, reading the room like a pro. That weary Baron looks like he's holding back a massive secret, sweating through his expensive clothes. Excusing himself, the host tries to bail, but the tension in the room is already suffocating. A nervous servant steps in, claiming the young master is unwell, the oldest lie in the book. Ivy Claire is not buying the act, signaling that they have enough info to start moving out. That butler watches them with a cold, calculating gaze, clearly hiding something behind his stiff mask. Walking away, Andrea's Cromwell and his team head out, ready to ditch this creepy, suspicious castle. Checking their gear, the squad prepares for the mission, completely ignoring the Baron's weird, desperate hospitality. Hazar catches a glimpse of the Baron's reflection in his blade, noting the guy totally reeks. Ivy Claire mocks our boy for his instincts, but admits the whole situation feels incredibly wrong. Pointing out the holes in the Baron's story, she questions why the investigation was so delayed. Andrea's Cromwell focuses on the butler, realizing that Guy is the real key to this mystery. Trying to force them to stay, the butler pushes for a rest, acting way too pushy. His eyes betray a desperate need for them to linger, making the whole vibe even creepier. Refusing the offer, Ivy Claire shuts him down, prioritizing their mission over his fake, polite concern. That butler can barely hide his frustration, letting out a sharp tusk as his plan crumbles. Watching him closely, Andrea's Cromwell sees the panic setting in. Their rejection really ruined his day. Fear is written all over the Baron's face, confirming that something truly dark is going down. Trembling hands and nervous gestures give them away, proving these two are definitely up to something. Andrea's Cromwell knows exactly what that look means. Someone is definitely hiding a dirty secret. So he rallies the squad to hit Thrym Village, sensing the mission is a trap. Their carriage barrels down the road, the driver pushing the horses to their absolute limit. Speeding through the wilderness, the team remains tense as they close in on their destination. Inside the cabin, Andrea's Cromwell insists they prioritize the investigation over finding a place to stay. He decides they must hit the landlord's castle immediately, despite the obvious red flags everywhere. Suddenly, a strange sensation hits him, his hand clutching his chest as he gasps aloud. Mana starts vibrating wildly within him, a warning sign that something is seriously, dangerously wrong. This closer they get to the village, the more intense his internal mana disturbance becomes. Panic ripples through the group as they realize their surroundings are turning hostile and chaotic. Andrea's Cromwell screams at the coachman to move, sensing an immediate threat to their lives. Terror flashes across the driver's face as he realizes they have completely lost all control. This coachman desperately cracks his whip, but the horses are already spiraling into a frenzy. Their carriage swerves violently off the path, the wheels shaking as they lose all traction. Hazar shouts in confusion, demanding to know what is happening to their runaway wild coach. Silence falls over the team as they realize they are trapped in a deadly situation. Chaos erupts inside the cabin as the carriage begins to tear itself apart from impact. Debris flies everywhere while the vehicle slams into the ground with a bone-jarring, loud crash. Realizing there is no time left to react, the squad braces for the inevitable wreck. Andrea's Cromwell yells for everyone to hold on as their mission turns into pure survival. Panic sets in as the team realizes they are hurtling toward a total disaster. Metal screeches against stone, the carriage disintegrating into a cloud of splinters and dust. Impact leaves the squad scattered in a village square that feels completely and utterly wrong. Locals are acting like absolute lunatics, twitching and moving with a terrifying, unnatural, rhythmic grace. Everyone is dancing in the street, a synchronized nightmare that defies all logic and reason. 3 moons hang in the sky, casting a sickly glow over the possessed, shuffling crowd. Andrea's Cromwell surveys the wreckage, his team barely standing after that brutal, high-speed carriage wreck. Horses are losing their minds, neighing in terror while the villagers continue their bizarre dance. Confusion grips the squad as they watch the townsfolk move like mindless, enchanted puppets. Every villager is locked in this trance, their limbs jerking in a disturbing, endless routine. Hazard demands answers from Andrea's Cromwell, who is just as baffled by this magical insanity. Mana starts surging through our boy, his senses screaming that this is no simple anomaly. Cold dread washes over him as his own power reacts to the overwhelming dark energy. From above, the village looks like a ritual site, a trap set for the unwary. Green mist swirls around the houses, confirming his worst fear. This is pure black magic. One villager collapses, his eyes rolling back as he foams at the mouth in agony. Ivy Claire pins the thrashing man down, her strength barely containing his sudden, violent outburst. This team surrounds the victim, watching as he struggles against an invisible, crushing dark force. She notes the kid's unnatural power, pinning him down while his body fights the curse. Examining the man's shredded feet, Andreas Cromwell confirms the dark truth. It is definitely a curse. Andreas Cromwell connects the dots, realizing the curse and their mission are tied together. Hazard notes the villagers should be dead from exhaustion, but something keeps them moving. Pondering the mystery, Andreas Cromwell feels the weight of this bizarre magical trap. Vivian complains about the trouble while the team stays on high alert for danger. Deep down, Andreas Cromwell knows his survival is a massive deviation from the game. Thinking back, he realizes the butler's pushy hospitality was definitely a calculated, deadly trap. Sipping wine at the castle, the team narrowly avoided being silenced by the Baron. Their sudden arrival at the village ruined the host's plans, shifting the entire situation. Sensing mana levels matching a high-tier threat, Andreas Cromwell prepares for a brutal fight. Looking over the village, he finds the scale of this dark magic truly terrifying. Panic hits him as he wonders if an artifact is fueling this massive curse. Vivian snaps him out of his thoughts, demanding to know what is actually wrong. Deciding to prioritize facts, Andreas Cromwell leads the squad toward the landlord's creepy house. Approaching the estate, they see eerie burning figures standing guard like silent, ghostly sentinels. Kicking the doors open, the team forces their way into the dark, ominous mansion. Entering the main hall, they find the interior just as chaotic as the outside. Scanning the room, the squad keeps their weapons drawn, ready for a sudden ambush. Bodies lie scattered across the floor, caught in the same trance as the villagers. Checking the victims, they see the horrific toll this dark magic takes on people. Staring at the stairs, Andreas Cromwell senses something massive waiting for them upstairs. Andreas Cromwell spots the gear on the fallen, realizing they were the original investigation team. Ivy Claire notes the bodies have been cold for a while, making this a total disaster. Doubts creep in as Andreas Cromwell questions if they can actually handle this mess alone. He drops the theory that a black mage is behind this, while Ivy Claire demands proof. Dark energy is clearly feeding off human emotions, turning the whole village into a battery. Ivy Claire knows that human misery is the ultimate fuel for this kind of black magic. Logic dictates the landlord was silenced because he was a massive thorn in their side. Andreas Cromwell points to the burning souls outside, confirming the ritual is already in full swing. Silence falls as the team realizes the scale of the trap they just walked into. Keeping his cool, Andreas Cromwell vows to hunt down the culprits once they finish the search. Searching the mansion becomes their top priority, even if the place is a total death trap. Ivy Claire stays sharp, watching the shadows while the others hold up their flickering light. Frustration builds because the landlord's body is still missing, leaving them with zero solid leads. Andreas Cromwell tells Hazard to check the window, sensing the situation is about to explode. Hazard freezes, his eyes widening as he realizes they have been spotted by the mob. Below them, the villagers are swarming the estate, moving with a terrifying, singular hive mind focus. Panic hits Andreas Cromwell, realizing the mastermind is finally making a move against the team. Hazard stares down at the hollow-eyed crowd, wondering how they are going to survive this. It is obvious now that the entire village was just waiting for them to enter. Turning to Ivy Claire, Andreas Cromwell begs for a plan before they get completely swarmed. Andreas Cromwell calls the shots, ordering a full retreat before they get completely swarmed. Hazard snaps to attention, ready to bolt as the team realizes they are totally outnumbered. Boots hit the floor running, the squad scrambling to find any exit from this nightmare. Sweat drips down our boy's face, the tension hitting an all-time high in this death trap. That mob of possessed villagers surges forward, their faces twisted into a truly horrifying, manic grin. Panic sets in as the team realizes the horde has already breached the second floor. Close quarters combat erupts instantly, Andreas Cromwell forced to shove back the encroaching, mindless dancing crowd. Hazard dives into the fray, swinging his blade to clear a path through the madness. Bodies collide in the narrow hallway, our boy fighting for every inch of breathing room. Shouting orders, Andreas Cromwell tells the team to shield their mage at all costs. Holding the line, he takes the front, staring down the hollow-eyed, twitching, possessed townsfolk. Adrenaline spikes as he realizes they are being pushed into a corner by the swarm. Mana explodes in a blinding flash, Andreas Cromwell unleashing power to blast the crowd back. Dust and debris fill the air, the squad momentarily gaining space amidst the chaotic wreckage. Glowing energy pulses from a mysterious source, the dark magic tightening its grip on everyone. Bloodied and battered, the team struggles to stay conscious while the curse continues to feed. Screaming for action, Andreas Cromwell demands an escape plan before the mob regroups again. Grabbing his ally, he signals for the final push, desperate to reach the only exit. Ivy Claire kicks the window wide open, shattering the glass to create their only path. Leaping into the night, the squad makes a daring escape as the village watches below. Andreas Cromwell and the squad are hauling tail, desperate to escape the encroaching, mindless mob. Screaming for everyone to run, while the situation spirals into absolute, unadulterated chaos, total disaster. Andreas Cromwell gets a sudden unwanted flashback to his last operation, proving his luck is trash. Mana flares in his palm, a desperate attempt to gain some breathing room from the swarm. Greasing the floor with magic, he tries to trip up the horde, but they just keep coming. Earth Shield slams down to block the path, but the enemy is not exactly playing by the rules. Hazard demands to know if Andreas Cromwell can track the Black Mage, despite the mounting, deadly pressure. Ivy Claire confirms she can do it right now, provided they do not die in the next second. Since the enemy is being so loud with their mana, finding them is actually a total breeze. Mana detection kicks in, Andreas Cromwell bracing for the feedback as the dark energy starts to spike. Visions of the cursed villagers flash through his mind, a chaotic mess of suffering and dark magic. Everything blurs as the tracking spell locks onto the source, the intensity hitting an all-time high. Reality warps around the village, the magical signature pinpointing exactly where the mastermind is hiding out. Zooming in on the target, the location is finally revealed, a perfect trap-filled bullseye for the team. Andreas Cromwell locks eyes with the target, his expression shifting from panic to pure, focused hunter mode. Pointing out the house, he coordinates the strike, calling Ivy Claire a seaweed head for good measure. Ivy Claire takes off, Andreas Cromwell scrambling to keep up while the mob continues their relentless pursuit. Speed is the only thing keeping them alive, the team tearing through the village like ghosts. Watching from the shadows, the mastermind observes their every move, completely unimpressed by their desperate, frantic escape. Smirking behind a mask, the villain scoffs at their efforts. Clearly, the real game has only begun. Andreas Cromwell kicks the door down, wood splintering under his boot with zero hesitation. Ivy Claire sighs at his lack of subtlety while they realize they found the hideout. Suddenly, a massive glowing pink barrier erupts, blocking their path and signaling a total trap. Panic flares in Andreas Cromwell's eyes as he realizes they walked right into the enemy's hands. Hazard looks absolutely wrecked, whispering about his sister while the team realizes they were played. Our boy stares at the barrier, his mind racing to process this sudden magical ambush. A broken, bandaged soul whimpers in pain, clearly suffering under the weight of this curse. Shock hits Andreas Cromwell as he realizes the sheer scale of the misery trapped inside. Mana crackles as he tries to break the seal, but the dark energy is simply overwhelming. Disbelief washes over him, his face pale as he realizes the true nature of this threat. Whispers of dark magic taunt him, comparing his desperate struggle to a moth hitting a flame. Purple energy surges, a terrifying display of power that makes the entire building start shaking. Looking down, the village is completely engulfed in a swirling, nightmare vortex of black magic. Andreas Cromwell freezes as a voice commands him to kneel in the name of Sloth. Confusion hits him like a freight train, the name Sloth triggering a massive internal alarm. Standing in the dark, he wonders why this specific name is popping up right now. A golden box appears, revealing the game is actually called Great Sin, a total disaster. This Codex Apocalypse is revealed, showing the 7 sins were split to summon the boss. Realizing these items are the key to everything, he prepares for the fight of his life. Combat explodes as he strikes, finally taking the fight to the source of this madness. Andreas Cromwell is reeling, questioning why this specific name is popping up in the middle of nowhere. Realizing he cannot handle this solo, our boy decides he needs to regroup with allies. Sprinting through the chaos, he dodges the mindless crowd while searching for his missing team. Bodies are flying everywhere as the carnage intensifies, leaving no room for a tactical retreat. Ivy Claire is losing it, her eyes glowing red as she goes full berserk mode. Screaming for death, she cuts through the air with a lethal, uncontrolled burst of energy. Andreas Cromwell rushes in, shouting for Hazard to explain what exactly happened to poor Vivian. Hazard looks shaken, admitting he has never seen her in such a terrifying, unstable state. Glaring at the situation, Andreas Cromwell mutters that he knew he could never trust a zealot. Watching the wounded ally on the ground, he decides to play along with this disaster. Hazard reports that Ivy Claire is trapped inside a barrier, making the whole mission impossible. Panic flashes across his face, Andreas Cromwell realizing just how deep this trap really goes. Suddenly a voice mocks them, and he realizes the Black Mage is finally speaking up. Pointing toward the source, Andreas Cromwell tells Hazard they need to reach Ivy Claire immediately. Hazard takes the lead, insisting he will handle the others while Andreas Cromwell saves her. Watching him go, our boy thinks he is way too obvious but better than betrayal. Ivy Claire swings her blade with wild abandon, tearing through the shadows in her madness. Fearing the dark magic will consume her entirely, Andreas Cromwell knows one mistake means death. She lunges at the villagers, her movements erratic and fueled by pure, corrupted mana energy. Staring in horror, Andreas Cromwell realizes she's about to walk into a fatal strike. Ivy Claire is absolutely losing it, her eyes glowing red as she goes full berserk. Andreas Cromwell watches in total shock as she tears through the mob like a whirlwind. She's not just surviving, she's counterattacking with a lethal, terrifying burst of energy. Watching the carnage, the mastermind scoffs at the wasted potential of such raw, chaotic power. Perched above the village, the masked villain notes that the only sane one has fled. Calmly, the hooded figure observes the chaos, clearly impressed by the sheer scale of destruction. Andreas Cromwell stares up, realizing the boss has finally decided to grace them with presence. Mocking his confidence, the villain looms over the scene, ready to drop the next trap. Extending a hand, the mastermind offers a twisted test to reward our boy's pathetic bravery. Dark energy surges, slamming into Andreas Cromwell before he can even think to dodge it. Panic sets in as he realizes his defenses are crumbling under this overwhelming magical assault. Floating in a void of purple static, he feels his very existence starting to fray. Staring into the abyss, his eyes widen as reality begins to shatter into jagged pieces. Reaching out, he watches his own hand dissolve into shimmering, broken fragments of pure light. Everything he knows is being erased, his body turning into a glitchy, cosmic mess, total disaster. Hexagonal patterns crawl across his face, marking the final stage of this brutal, magical corruption. Gasping for air, he looks down at his hands, confused by the sudden, jarring shift. Waking up in a daze, he wonders if the entire nightmare was just a hallucination. Explosions rock the ground nearby, snapping him back to the harsh reality of the battlefield. Scrambling for his rifle, Andreas Cromwell frantically searches for his missing team in the dust. Andreas Cromwell clutches his head, blood streaming down his face as the trauma hits hard. Boots drag across the scorched earth, his legs barely holding him up in this wreck. Staring into the void, his eyes reflect the absolute carnage left behind by the dark magic. Amidst the roaring flames, a lone silhouette stands, mocking the ruin of the entire village. A dying comrade whispers a final, desperate warning to Andreas Cromwell, his voice fading away. Shock registers on his face, Andreas Cromwell realizing he is staring at his own fallen ally. Rushing toward the body, he tries to reach the man before the light leaves him. Lifting the wounded soldier, Andreas Cromwell screams for a response, but the silence is deafening. Desperation fuels his movements, Andreas Cromwell shaking the man, hoping for any sign of life. Sparks of static dance across the dying man, a glitchy, unnatural end to a brutal fight. Kneeling in the dark, Andreas Cromwell demands answers from the air, his voice cracking with grief. Reality splits down the middle, revealing a haunting connection between the living and the dead. A golden ring is pressed into his palm, the weight of a household legacy descending. With his final breath, the man begs Andreas Cromwell to let go of the past. Tears well up as the dying soldier offers a final, bittersweet wish for his future. Reaching out, Andreas Cromwell tries to grasp the fading soul, but his hand hits nothing. High above, the masked villain watches the emotional fallout, completely unmoved by the tragic scene. Dark energy swirls into a massive, crackling vortex, the mastermind preparing for the final blow. Shattering the air, Andreas Cromwell unleashes a desperate counterattack, his rage finally boiling over. Blinding light erupts as the two powers collide, turning the battlefield into a chaotic storm. A massive shockwave erupts, shattering the air as Andreas Cromwell makes his move. Standing amidst the debris, he looks ready to absolutely wreck this entire magical setup. This masked villain is genuinely shook, stammering about how anyone could break that curse. Andreas Cromwell does not even blink, his cold stare cutting right through the dark energy. Fed up with the games, he decides it is time to stop playing nice. A system notification pops up, full synchronization achieved, giving him some serious combat upgrades. Mocking the villain, Andreas Cromwell points out that their actual skill level is pathetic. Dark energy lashes out in a desperate, frantic attempt to regain some control. Dodging the strike, Andreas Cromwell moves with lethal precision, closing the distance instantly. He flexes his special forces training, daring the enemy to try something actually impressive. Losing their cool, the villain screams in rage, unleashing a wave of chaotic power. Andreas Cromwell pivots, his movements fluid as he forces the enemy into a corner. Crashing through the defenses, he keeps the pressure high, never giving them a second. This villain realizes they have to pull out the necromancy to survive this encounter. Stepping over the fallen, Andreas Cromwell keeps his eyes locked on the main threat. Looking at the swirling vortex, he decides that things are going perfectly according to plan. Not a soul is watching, so he prepares to drop the hammer on them. This masked opponent leaps into the air, trying to escape the relentless, incoming assault. Demanding to know exactly who this guy is, the villain prepares for the end. Andreas Cromwell just smirks, ready to show them exactly what his new necromancy can do. Andreas Cromwell's eyes widen as he realizes the situation just took a massive, dark turn. System notifications flood his vision, confirming he has enough corpses to start some necromancy. Skeletons rise from the ground, leaving the masked enemy absolutely stunned by this sudden twist. Our boy realizes the congregation knew about this all along, but he plans to pivot. Declaring his mission to recover the Page of Sloth, he commands his new skeletal army. Mocking the choice of minions, the villain unleashes a barrage of dark, swirling energy blasts. Undead warriors charge forward, ignoring the incoming magical onslaught with their hollow, empty skulls. Floating above the chaos, the hooded antagonist questions if he can truly match such power. Purple energy tears through the air, shattering the ground as the two forces violently collide. Debris flies everywhere, yet Andreas Cromwell stands firm, watching his summons take the heavy hits. Raising a hand, he conjures an earth shield to block the remaining waves of destruction. Tired of the posturing, the villain lunges forward with a blade made of pure shadow. Calling out for his ally, Andreas Cromwell prepares a countermove to turn the tide. Dismissing the skeletons as weak, the enemy swings again, but he is completely miscalculating. Gripping his weapon tight, our boy waits for the perfect opening to strike back hard. A skeleton leaps into the fray, intercepting the dark spear with surprising lethal speed. Shock registers on the villain's face, his confidence crumbling as his attack gets completely negated. Disbelief fills the air, the enemy reeling from the sight of his magic being shattered. Staring in horror, the mastermind realizes a mere skeleton just cut through his ultimate spear. Andreas Cromwell smirks, holding the glowing relic as he prepares to finish this fight properly. Andreas Cromwell stares in total shock, realizing exactly what he is up against right now. That masked antagonist unleashes a massive glowing relic, clearly ready to burn the whole place. Golden energy swirls around the artifact, crackling with a power that feels way too dangerous. Realizing it is the Page of Sloth, Andreas Cromwell knows the stakes just hit orbit. Mocking his effort, the villain claims he is wasting his precious, stolen power on them. Reaching out with a dark hand, the enemy promises a painful, permanent end to everything. Explosions rip through the ground as the villain lunges, moving with terrifying, unnatural speed. Andreas Cromwell dashes forward, his cloak trailing behind him as he prepares to dodge death. Thinking fast, he realizes he can just barely keep up with this insane, rapid pace. Summoning his skeletal minion Nickel, he uses the undead warrior to tank the heavy hits. Dark tendrils lash out, slamming into the battlefield while Andreas Cromwell weaves through the chaos. Screaming for silence, the villain demands they just die already. Talk about a bad attitude. Dodging another strike, Andreas Cromwell notes the attacks are getting faster, pushing him to limit. Watching him struggle, the enemy realizes he has not fully mastered the Page of Sloth. Ordering a strike on his blind spot, the villain thinks he has finally cornered our boy. Nickel jumps into the path of the blade, saving Andreas Cromwell from a lethal blow. Impact rocks the area, sending debris flying as the clash creates a massive, blinding crater. Looming over the ruins, the villain conjures giant, spectral hands to crush the remaining resistance. Staring down at the wreckage, the masked enemy freezes, his eyes widening in sudden disbelief. Andreas Cromwell stands amidst the rubble, still breathing and ready to keep this fight going. Andreas Cromwell is absolutely fuming, calling out the guy who just played him for keeps. That masked antagonist stares back, completely stunned that his little plan hit a major snag. Laughing off the failure, the enemy summons massive, shadowy claws to crush our boy for good. With a twisted grin, the villain promises to send Andreas Cromwell to join his fallen skeleton. Dark energy erupts, massive spectral hands descending to turn the battlefield into a total graveyard. Andreas Cromwell narrows his eyes, his focus sharpening as he prepares to dodge the incoming doom. Suddenly, the skeleton leaps into the fray, blocking the path and leaving the enemy totally baffled. A laser-thin line of energy slices through the air, marking the intensity of this brutal standoff. Andreas Cromwell stands his ground, the shadows parting around him as he refuses to back down. Looking up at the sky, he wonders who is really pulling the strings behind this mess. This battlefield is a wreck, but the enemy is finally down, leaving a bloody, silent scene. Peering at the fallen foe, Andreas Cromwell realizes the Baron Butler was a secret black mage. That revelation hits hard, confirming the Baron is definitely tangled up in this whole dark conspiracy. Reaching down, Andreas Cromwell snatches the glowing relic, the weight of the situation feeling heavy. A system notification confirms he snagged the Page of Sloth, boosting his mana recovery like crazy. Checking his surroundings, he remembers his loyal skeleton Nickel is still ready for the next move. Handing the relic to the skeleton, he orders Nickel to keep it safe for the moment. Stashing the artifact in his storage, he decides to worry about the consequences later on. Confusion sets in as the barrier stays up, despite the caster being dead on the ground. Suddenly, a glowing berserk force lunges from the shadows, ready to tear everything apart for real. Andreas Cromwell is sweating the logistics, wondering how to explain his survival without outing himself. Reaching out to touch the swirling void, he senses this barrier is totally different. Suddenly, the dark energy grabs hold, pulling him into a vortex he did not expect. Getting dragged into the abyss, he realizes his plan just took a massive, unwanted detour. A flash of light signals his arrival, dumping him right into a new, strange location. Sitting on the floor, a young girl named Vivian Belkin stares back in absolute terror. This chair he is sitting on starts talking, and she is losing her mind. Classic. Trying to calm her down, he insists he is not a ghost or a demon. Claiming to be a fairy here to rescue her, he tries to play the hero. Vivian just stares in silence, clearly wondering if this guy is actually hitting his head. Internally, Andreas Cromwell is roasting his own performance, questioning why he is acting like this. Flashbacks hit, showing the young girl getting slapped by a cruel, high-society noblewoman. Since he is invisible, Andreas Cromwell gets a front-row seat to the household's dirty laundry. Discovering the woman is the Count's second wife, he starts piecing together the family drama. This Belkin household wanted a male heir for their swordsmanship, leaving Vivian totally sidelined. Tragedy strikes as her own mother turns on her, wishing she was never born. Abandoned by everyone who should have loved her, the poor kid is completely isolated. With no one left to protect her, Vivian is left to fend for herself. Loneliness and constant abuse plant the seeds of madness, turning her world into darkness. As time drags on, the insanity takes over, leading to a brutal, bloody outcome. Vivian absolutely snaps, leaving a trail of carnage after taking out the entire teaching staff. Andreas Cromwell appears, trying to play the benevolent fairy while she is clearly spiraling out. He offers his guidance, acting like a mentor while secretly just trying to manage her. Tears stream down her face as she processes the sudden, bizarre appearance of this mysterious guy. Watching her break down, Andreas Cromwell wonders why he is stuck babysitting a traumatized noble kid. She admits she is totally unaccustomed to kindness, making his awkward attempts at comfort even weirder. Telling her she has hidden potential, he tries to pivot her focus toward actual sword training. Vivian is stunned by the praise, having spent her whole life being treated like total trash. Admitting she has never held a blade, she clings to his words like a desperate lifeline. He promises to stick by her side, effectively becoming her secret, invisible guardian in this hellhole. Demanding total secrecy, he makes her swear to keep his existence hidden from the entire household. She agrees immediately, desperate for any connection that does not involve being yelled at by her family. A nasty noblewoman storms in, oblivious to the invisible Andreas Cromwell coaching the young girl. Training begins in secret, with him pushing her hard while she slowly finds her own strength. A month flies by, and Vivian is already looking like a completely different, much deadlier person. Meeting at their designated spot, she is eager to show off her progress to her mentor. Andreas Cromwell keeps his distance, maintaining his mysterious persona while checking her form with a glare. Snapping at her to keep quiet, he reminds her that his identity is strictly top secret. She giggles, clearly enjoying the thrill of having a secret weapon that nobody else can see. Raising her wooden sword, she prepares for another round, ready to prove her worth to him. Andreas Cromwell reflects on the months spent training Vivian, his secret student in the shadows. Watching her movements, he notes how his own combat experience perfectly complements her natural talent. She displays incredible skill, proving herself to be a genuine prodigy with a blade in hand. Observing from afar, Andreas Cromwell finds her rapid progress impossible for a mere month of training. He points out that her recent praise from the instructor is well-earned, given her hidden potential. Vivian remains silent, her expression guarded as she absorbs his words while standing in the garden. Sensing her hesitation, Andreas Cromwell wonders why she seems so troubled despite her clear, rising success. Confused by her sudden mood shift, he questions if his perception of her confidence was wrong. Vivian confesses that even with all the praise, she still feels like something is missing here. Admitting her frustration, she laments that her mysterious fairy mentor refuses to show himself to her. Andreas Cromwell stares back, his eyes narrowing as he realizes the weight of her deep loneliness. Maintaining his invisible persona, he reminds her of his nature, but she questions her own worth. Holding her sword tight, she reveals she thought hard work would finally earn her some recognition. Tears well up as she laments that no amount of effort seems to bring him forth. Despair creeps into her voice, leaving Andreas Cromwell to watch her struggle with her own insecurity. Suddenly, Count Belkin appears in the garden, catching them both off guard with his unexpected presence. This count observes Vivian, his cold eyes scanning her as he acknowledges her surprising, newfound talent. Demanding a demonstration, he orders her to show him that impressive swordsmanship one more time. Vivian freezes in terror, her eyes wide as she stammers a nervous, compliant response to him. Tension fills the air as the massive estate looms, setting the stage for a dangerous performance. Vivian Belkin executes a flawless strike, her form sharp enough to cut through the tension. Stunned by her sudden display of raw talent, she barely registers the weight of it. That cold-blooded count actually acknowledges her skill, dropping a rare compliment about her noble bloodline. Walking away like he owns the place, the count leaves her reeling from his unexpected praise. Andreas Cromwell watches from the sidelines, his invisible presence still looming over his traumatized secret student. Calling out to her mentor, Vivian finally breaks the silence with a shaky, vulnerable voice. Tears well up as she admits that was the first time her father ever noticed her. A strange, magical crackle fills the air, signaling that something is shifting deep inside her psyche. Watching her closely, Andreas Cromwell realizes the girl is undergoing a massive, internal transformation right now. Desperate to keep her mentor close, she clings to the idea of him staying forever. Lightning sparks around her as she declares that her true self is finally waking up. Seeing the change, Andreas Cromwell notes that the girl he trained is finally coming into focus. Thanking him for the guidance, she admits he gave her the strength to move forward. Deciding to leave her painful past behind, she reaches out toward her invisible, mysterious guardian. Stepping into the light, Andreas Cromwell finally makes his presence felt in this high-stakes moment. Locking pinkies, they seal a silent promise that binds their fates together in this hellhole. Vivian stares at the empty air, her eyes wide as she feels his phantom touch. Whispering for her to hold onto that resolve, Andreas Cromwell cements their strange, secret bond. Reality shatters around them like broken glass, marking the start of a dangerous new chapter. Crying with relief, she thanks her fairy mentor as the world collapses into pure chaos. A blinding flash of light signals the end of that bizarre, dreamlike mental state. Shards of reality scatter into the void, leaving our crew to face the cold truth. Confidence radiates from the group, knowing Vivian has the potential to pull this off. Surrounded by crackling magical energy, Andreas Cromwell and his team stand over their fallen foe. Vivian lies there, finally resting after the mental toll of that intense psychic struggle. Reaching out to check on her, Andreas Cromwell confirms she is the same girl. Truth bombs drop as they realize Baron Balleric is the mastermind behind the Thrym incident. Ivy Clare, clearly done with the pleasantries, orders a brutal decapitation to secure the evidence. Determination burns in her eyes as she demands they march straight to the Baron's castle. Moving with lethal efficiency, the team wastes no time storming toward their next big target. Andreas Cromwell notes the terrifying aura Ivy projects, knowing full well she means business. Chaos erupts at the castle gates as a guard gets unceremoniously tossed aside like trash. Terror hits the guard's face, realizing he is completely outmatched by this sudden, violent arrival. Ivy Clare commands the guards to drop their weapons, her presence stopping them cold. Declaring herself an assistant professor, she threatens immediate execution for anyone defending the corrupt Baron. Watching the carnage unfold, Andreas Cromwell wonders if she is actually going to kill everyone. Guards tremble in their boots, staring down the barrel of a very messy public execution. Holding up the severed head, Ivy Claire asks if they recognize their former disgraced leader. Demanding entry, she forces the soldiers to escort them directly to the Baron's private quarters. Silence falls over the terrified guards, their brains struggling to process this absolute bloody nightmare. This team arrives at the estate, ready to crash this party with zero invitations. Kicking the doors down, they find the target waiting in a room that reeks. Shock hits their faces as they finally see what the Baron has been hiding away. A broken father confesses the truth, admitting his son Evan is long gone, dead. Pointing to the fleshy, pulsating horror on the couch, he introduces his son Edel. Watching the creature writhe, he laments that his boy should have been buried months ago. Realizing the dark magic involved, the team stares at the mess with pure, cold disgust. Explaining his descent into madness, the Baron reveals a robed man offered a twisted solution. Desperate to save his son, he sold his soul to keep the nightmare breathing. Admitting he chose this grotesque existence over letting his child rest in peace. Disgust flashes across their eyes, seeing how far a parent will go for delusion. Calling out to the blob, the Baron begs for forgiveness from his own creation. Kneeling before the monster, he grovels while the team closes in to end this. Grabbing the Baron by the throat, they decide he has done enough talking today. Slamming him to the floor, they tell him to apologize to his actual victims. Guards scramble in, terrified as they watch their master get tossed around like trash. Ordering the soldiers to call for backup, the team prepares to finish the job. Floating debris gathers in the air, crackling with the raw power of a spell. Launching a rock spear, the mage makes sure this nightmare ends right here. Striking true, the attack puts the wretched creature out of its misery for good. This Baron stares in absolute horror, his mind clearly snapping as the reality hits him. Guards look on, completely stunned by the sudden violent end to their master's twisted experiment. Andreas Cromwell and his crew survey the wreckage, the air thick with lingering dark energy. Turning to the team, the green-haired leader demands to know who authorized this reckless, messy strike. He insists that black magic abominations need immediate disposal before they start acting up again. Coldly, he reminds them that all critical intel must go straight to the Baron right. Imperial investigators haul the Baron away, his pathetic reign ending in a locked iron cage. That pulsating, fleshy horror is carted off, a grotesque reminder of a father's total failure. Back at the academy, Vivian and the team sit down to provide their official testimony. Everyone agrees the Baron was deep in bed with a black mage, no doubt about it. Authorities call for another hearing, determined to drag every last secret out of the Baron. Dismissed from the interrogation, the team finally gets a moment to breathe and head home. Walking away from the castle, the group reflects on the absolute chaos they just unleashed. Our green-haired lead muses that the Baron is definitely going to face some serious consequences. He drops a bombshell, claiming he actually did the Baron a favor by killing his son. Visions of those insane wizards experimenting on the poor boy flash through their collective memory. Vivian looks up, wondering if her mysterious mentor had already pieced that tragic truth together. Strolling through the grounds, they discuss the grim reality of what that boy endured. She asks if he killed the kid just to save him from further suffering. Laughing off the question, he plays it cool, pretending he almost slipped into character again. Vivian Belkin senses a familiar vibe from Andreas Cromwell, calling out his suspicious tone. Lucia Everlast sprints over, shouting for Andreas Cromwell while the others walk through campus. She confirms the hearing is finally over, clearly excited to share some big news. Pulling out a tablet, Lucia Everlast insists they take a look at the latest headlines. Their faces are plastered all over the news, officially recognized for taking down that mage. Andreas Cromwell just wants some peace, but the fame is already starting to pile up. Lucia Everlast demands a celebratory meal, acting like she did all the heavy lifting herself. Our boy shuts that down fast, refusing to let her drain his hard-earned reward money. Vivian Belkin gets introduced, though Lucia Everlast is clearly late to the party as usual. Formal introductions happen, with Andreas Cromwell dryly noting that his companion is a total airhead. Ignoring the jab, Lucia Everlast keeps pushing for that dinner, relentless in her pursuit. Andreas Cromwell rejects the offer, citing the ongoing legal mess as his primary excuse. Setting a meeting at the Magic Tower for tomorrow, he warns her against being late. Reality hits as Andreas Cromwell ends up carrying a completely exhausted Lucia Everlast. She complains about trusting him, while he drags her along with zero patience left. Walking up the hill toward the massive tower, he tries to keep a steady pace. Lucia Everlast looks absolutely wiped out, clinging to his back like a sleepy, oversized koala. They arrive at the imposing gates, identified by the guards as the heroes of interest. A staff member greets them, ushering the duo inside to handle the official business. Inside the shifting magic tower, Andreas Cromwell forces the groggy Lucia Everlast to finally wake up. Andreas Cromwell and Vivian Belkin climb the stairs, discussing that mysterious senior from yesterday. Lucia Everlast presses for details on their connection, getting absolutely nothing back from our boy. Vivian stares blankly as the interrogation continues, clearly wondering why this is even happening. Ignoring the awkward silence, Lucia Everlast pivots to begging for a free dinner again. Suddenly, a booming voice echoes through the tower, stopping them dead in their tracks. Golden energy erupts as a massive eagle manifests, signaling a very important arrival. Both students look stunned, feeling the sheer weight of the magical pressure filling the air. Bart Alvin, the legendary Tower Master, descends with his avian companion in a flash. Everyone freezes, realizing the big boss of the Rodland Magic Tower just showed up. Standing before them, the Tower Master radiates an aura that makes their knees shake. He eyes Andreas Cromwell with a smirk, noting the kid has the same annoying face. Bart Alvin stands tall, the head of the Alvin household and master of the tower. Andreas Cromwell internally fumes, annoyed that the big shot is making such a dramatic scene. Turning his attention to Lucia Everlast, the Tower Master confirms her noble lineage with ease. He drops a lecture on building a reputation, while our duo tries to stay quiet. Ordering everyone to stand back, he takes control of the space with a wave. Vivian watches in awe, sensing the sheer scale of the magic being unleashed right now. Lucia Everlast whispers that he is showing off on purpose, clearly unimpressed by the theatrics. Hearing every word, the Tower Master grins, proving that nothing escapes his sharp ears. Reality warps as he teleports them away, leaving the staircase empty in a blinding light. This Tower Master descends with his eagle, radiating enough magical pressure to rattle the room. Local mages lose their minds, screaming in shock as the legendary boss finally makes landfall. Ignoring the panic, he demands to know if the potion examination is actually finished yet. With a cold stare, he notes that only the production method details remain to be settled. He casually downs the potion, testing its quality like he's sampling a cheap tavern wine. Listing off the rare ingredients, he dissects the recipe with terrifying, pinpoint accuracy and ease. Turning his gaze toward the student, he asks if there is anything else hidden inside. She quietly confirms the final ingredients, feeling the weight of his intense, scrutinizing magical aura. A smirk crosses his face, clearly impressed by the girl's talent despite her young age. He looms over them, remarking that the rumors about her skills were actually true. Ordering the council to approve the results, he shifts his focus to the remaining duo. Suddenly he pauses, his eyes locking onto Andreas Cromwell with a sharp, suspicious glare. Demanding to know why Andreas Cromwell is present, he fills the hall with golden energy. Our boy stays silent, bracing for the inevitable lecture from the tower's most powerful man. This Tower Master questions if Andreas Cromwell just rode the girl's coattails for the credit. Both students stand frozen, caught in the crosshairs of a man who hates wasting time. Vivian Belkin quickly defends her partner, insisting the potion would be impossible without his help. Andreas Cromwell backs her up, claiming he was just a helper while she did everything. Grunting in annoyance, the Tower Master decides he will verify their claims for himself now. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he prepares to put their story to test. Vivian Belkin watches Andreas Cromwell, noting his magic seems restricted outside the tower's walls. Under the Tower Master's intense gaze, they start brewing the potion with nervous precision. Every movement is calculated, the pressure in the room thick enough to choke a horse. Andreas Cromwell picks his ingredients carefully, knowing one wrong choice could blow them all up. 5 minutes later, the Tower Master samples the brew like a bored, high-end food critic. He admits the potion is flawless, though his tone remains as cold as Arctic ice. Suddenly, he pivots to a sharp interrogation, demanding to know why they chose Hong Pishi. Andreas Cromwell tries to explain his reasoning, but the big boss is not in the mood. Standing over them, the Tower Master looms, his presence dominating the entire laboratory space. They explain the goal was removing side effects while boosting the overall efficiency. Vivian Belkin watches the exchange, silently praying that Andreas Cromwell does not lose his cool. He gets cut off mid-sentence, the Tower Master clearly unimpressed by his amateur explanation. Slowly the man removes his blindfold, revealing eyes that seem to pierce through their souls. He stares at Andreas Cromwell, clearly recognizing something familiar about the kid's defiant attitude. Grabbing him by the collar, he insists the boy he knew could not possibly be this. Glowing eyes lock onto his, the Tower Master demanding to know his true identity. Vivian Belkin stands frozen, watching as the situation spirals into a dangerous personal confrontation. Tower Master leans in close, his face twisted in a mix of confusion and rage. Andreas Cromwell stares back, his expression unreadable as the tension hits a breaking point. A faint, knowing smirk creeps across his face, signaling he is done playing nice. Andreas Cromwell stands his ground, flatly confirming his identity to the legendary Tower Master. He reminds the powerful man of the constant bullying he endured back in the day. Silence hangs heavy in the air as the Tower Master processes this bold, unexpected defiance. Amused by the sudden spark of personality, the veteran mage decides to toy with him. A dangerous bet is proposed, with the Tower Master flashing a grin that spells trouble. If Andreas Cromwell creates another successful medicine, his family's crushing debt will be wiped clean. Should he fail this high-stakes challenge, however, he faces immediate expulsion from the prestigious academy. Vivian Belkin looks on, clearly shocked by the severity of the ultimatum hanging over them. This Tower Master looms over the group, waiting for an answer to his twisted game. Andreas Cromwell narrows his eyes, calculating the risks of this sudden, life-altering professional gamble. Taking a deep breath, he accepts the terms, knowing there is no backing out now. He formally agrees to the challenge, citing his duty as the heir of the Cromwells. Blindfolded and mocking, the Tower Master warns him that results are the only thing mattering. His intense gaze pierces through the room, leaving no doubt about his lethal high standards. Visions of the past flicker, revealing a younger Andreas Cromwell alongside a familiar dark mentor. This Tower Master watches the memory play out, seemingly aware of the boy's hidden history. He stares at the scene of the past, coldly anticipating the chaos that will follow. Time ticks down in the shadows, marking the agonizing countdown for a prisoner in chains. A mysterious woman, bound and wrapped in bandages, struggles against her magical, glowing restraints. Her eyes burn with a fierce red energy as she prepares to break her bonds. A massive magical shockwave rips through the air, signaling a total containment breach. That mysterious bandaged woman breaks free from her glowing restraints, looking absolutely terrifying. She stands amidst the wreckage, her long red hair flowing like a blood-soaked banner. Silence follows the destruction, her gaze cold enough to freeze the very soul. Andreas Cromwell demands she swear on her family name, playing a dangerous game of trust. A wicked, sharp-toothed grin spreads across her face, clearly enjoying the chaotic turn of events. She mocks him, claiming he lacks the guts to actually finish the job. Her eyes burn with an intense, fiery glow as she whispers his name, Andreas. Meanwhile, the city lights twinkle below, completely oblivious to the monster lurking nearby. Andreas Cromwell sighs, clutching his box of supplies while calculating his dwindling financial options. Training remains his only priority, but the constant need for cash is a massive headache. That cursed page of sloth sits in his inventory, useless and mocking his current poverty. Trading it for something actually practical seems like the only logical move right now. He accepts the grim reality of his situation, knowing he needs serious power-ups fast. Calling upon Karen becomes his desperate last resort, even if it feels like a trap. This tram rattles along the tracks, carrying him toward his next uncertain destination. Passengers shuffle around him, unaware that the guy in the cloak is plotting something huge. Andreas Cromwell stares out the window, his mind racing with plans to secure his future. Arriving at the grand estate, he approaches the gates with a heavy, determined stride. Someone watches him from the shadows, leaving him wondering if he is finally losing it. That sinister grin tells us everything we need to know about the trouble brewing ahead. Andreas Cromwell finally meets the big shot, who is clearly loving the attention he gets. Holding the potion like a vintage wine, the master demands a full report on everything. Accusations fly about secret research, but our boy plays it cool despite the intense pressure. Pointing toward the shelves, the master commands him to stop whining and get over here. Magical energy flares as a portal opens, proving that holding a grudge is his hobby. Walking down the stairs, Andreas Cromwell realizes that today is definitely not the day for talk. Keeping his head down, he decides that checking the vampire's status is the safest move. Both of them head into the depths, unaware of the chaos waiting in the shadows. Suddenly, the room explodes into rubble, leaving the master completely stunned by the sheer destruction. Dust and debris fill the air as they survey the wreckage of the containment area. Looking at the ruins, Andreas Cromwell notes that the evolution was a total success. Standing amidst the debris, they stare at the empty cell where the prisoner once stayed. Mourning the loss of a good test subject, our boy acts like it's a tragedy. Clenching his fist tight, the master is clearly losing his mind over this massive failure. Rage radiates off him as he grips the broken chain, ready to snap at anyone. Turning to Andreas Cromwell, he demands to know if the kid messed with the restraints. Piercing eyes lock onto him, searching for any sign of betrayal in that cold gaze. Playing the victim, Andreas Cromwell claims he was just terrified for his own pathetic life. Watching the master spiral, our boy thinks to himself that the guy is a total idiot. Andreas Cromwell muses on the hybrid's nature, clearly unimpressed by her lack of raw power. Holding the broken chains, he mocks the captive, telling her she absolutely deserves this misery. She screams in pure, unadulterated rage, rattling the heavy iron links with her desperate thrashing. Down the spiral staircase he goes, leaving the chaos behind like it's just another Tuesday. Walking home under the triple moon, he contemplates his next move with total, cold detachment. Mentally shelving the page of sloth, he decides that particular headache can wait for later. Suddenly, a long lock of red hair drifts down, signaling that he is not alone. Chills run down his spine as a familiar voice whispers his name. Andrea's right behind. That bandaged woman dangles from a tree branch, looking like a nightmare waiting to happen. She pins him against the dark, demanding answers with a grip that feels like iron. Locking eyes with him, she flashes a sharp-toothed grin that screams she is absolutely unhinged. Andreas Cromwell stares back, his eyes narrowing as he realizes his peaceful night just ended. Demanding to know about the power she supposedly gained, she looms over him, totally predatory. He tries to play it cool, asking if she really thinks he broke their deal. Mocking his family oath, she scoffs at his pathetic attempt to act like a victim. Floating in the air with purple energy, she forces him to listen to her demands. Admitting she could not break the restraints alone, she hints at a much darker secret method. Leaning in close, she taunts him to guess how she actually managed to escape today. Sniffing the air, she suddenly realizes he reeks of a very specific forbidden ancient sin. Her eyes glow with a terrifying red light, finally seeing exactly what he is hiding. Andreas Cromwell stares in shock, realizing his quiet night just took a turn for worse. That bandaged woman looms over him, clearly finding his panicked reaction to be quite amusing. He tries to regain his composure, but his face betrays the sheer absurdity of this encounter. She pins him against the tree, her grip tight enough to make his life flash by. Keeping her voice low, she decides to postpone their chat since they are way too visible. With a casual flick of her hand, she promises they will be meeting again very soon. Her red eyes burn with intensity, claiming she plans to put her new power to use. Andrea's Cromwell gasps for air, wondering how she possesses such terrifying strength in her current state. She flashes a wicked grin, suggesting he might just be her fated partner in this chaos.